Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That's just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends, and good morning. Welcome to the program. It is the Thursday edition of the Michael Dukes Show, and we are rapidly cruising on towards Election Day. Yes, it's just around the corner, and the word is we are definitely going to exceed. It looks like if we continue this trend, we're definitely going to exceed those who voted early in the 2020 election. 2020 election, they're saying 53,000 votes were cast. Right now, the current trajectory puts it at about 70,000. So a pretty significant jump, and that trend is continuing all throughout the country. Now, with the weather we've been having around the state, including the massive snowpocalyptic ice storm in Fairbanks last week that shut down the whole city for a couple days, and the big snowstorm here in the Anchorage and Wasilla and Kenai area, where it was like the whole south central coast was slammed. If that was going on Election Day, would you want to be going out? Well, of course. I mean, that's why early voting makes a lot of sense. So if you haven't early voted, which I have to admit, I have to do that today. Okay, if you haven't early voted, I recommend you go out and do that. It's on my list of things to do today, and we're going to get it done because nobody wants to be wandering around on Election Day going, oh, maybe I should go get it done. And whoever you vote for, I'm just saying, no on one, yes on two, and you vote for whoever else you want. That's all I'm asking. If you love me, that's what you'll do. All right, we're coming up here on today's program. We're going to be dealing with, of course, more politics. We're down to the last few days here, and I thought it'd be good to get a couple of high-powered ladies in here to talk about what's happening in their races. So we're starting off here in hour one with Representative Sarah Vance, who is running for re-election down on the southern peninsula, running for a state house for re-election in her seat, and a brand new contender up in the interior for hour two, and that is Leslie Hajdukovitch, who is running for state senate up there against the nearly 20-year incumbent Scott Kawasaki, who looks to be having some chinks in his armor. Ching, 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 right there, just kind of breaking it open. And I think he's vulnerable to this. So let's get it done. All right. So we'll see what goes on. So let's get started. Man, I sound so good this morning. Let's get started and get things going on here with the old radio program as we bring Sarah Vance onto the program to discuss her candidacy and the future of the state of Alaska. Good morning, Sarah. How are you this morning? How's things going? What's happening?
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's going well.
Good.
We have
good.
We have nice clear skies here. A little bit of snow on the ground. Things are looking good.
A little bit of snow, a little bit of rain. It's all good, right? It's all groovy. I know I'm jealous every time I talk to somebody from Homer. It's like, well, it's not quite so bad here as it is, where you're at. Thank you for rubbing that in. I appreciate that. All right, Sarah. Well, this morning we had a chance to talk to you just about a month ago about how everything's going. So I'd like to get an update on the on the race. What is your constituency saying? What's your experience been out on the road? How's the campaign going overall? How's, is it duking it out with your opponents? Is it getting vicious? Let's just kind of get a recap here of what's happened over the last month before we jump into some of the details of the future of the state of Alaska in your viewpoint. So how are things been going?
It's going well, and I think I have my opponent on the ropes because ever since I sent out a flyer calling out his high propensity to create taxes, he's been a little spun up about that and didn't like me talking about his record on the borough assembly for tax and spend. But it's kind of a challenge for him because his solutions to moving forward is more taxes. And, that's hard to get around when he's creating taxes to pay for the borough to pay for government funded childcare, things like that, that people are just saying, no way. We had a hospital bond proposition that the borough put forward that failed miserably. The people simply say, no, we want accountability with our money. And, he acted surprised that bond measure failed when there were 7 other bonds, in the prior years that all passed. And I said, don't be surprised because the people just can't handle any more right now. We want a strong economy. We want someone who's going to be a leader, not just throw money at the problems. And of course, the topic of education is very much at the forefront, and NEA is continuing to push the narrative that those of us who chose not to override the governor, just hate children and eat puppies for breakfast. So I am pushing back, saying that Alaskans in my district want funding and reforms. We want to give the children our tools to succeed in academics, and that's going to mean changes. So I'm holding my ground on that, and I know that education will be a topic moving forward, but, I'm going to stand up for our parents who are saying that we need better, and our teachers who say we need the bonuses, we want changes to help them be able to do their job. We need 100% correspondence funding and also an easier path for charter schools. And I think those are reasonable asks for more funding for education. So, this is the time where I've been fighting for the people on issues, but it's time for them to fight for me at the ballot box.
And for the record, puppies are delicious. Okay. So saying eating puppy, you hate children and you're eating, it's ironic because that's the first thing that happens is, you start talking about education. And I've talked about, the potential for education reform for 25 years. It was one of the first things I talked about because my children, my youngest daughter at the time, we were homeschooling her and we were talking about the problems with education and why we had decided to homeschool her. And it was the same thing, when I first started talking about it, some of the problems. Well, why do you hate children? Oh, no, I love children. That's why I'm trying to help this,
Exactly.
But it's the irony is that the immediate thing is it's the attack. And the irony also of the tax and spend mentality. I mean, you're doing the one thing that I think we should be asking all elected leaders and potential leaders is who pays. Right. If
Exactly.
you're a tax and spend kind of person, you want all these things, child care, defined benefits, this, that, royalties, extra credits for people and government spend on this. Okay, that's all great. That's all the nice to haves. But first of all, who pays? Is it must have is the first question. Is it constitutionally mandated? And the second thing is, who pays, right? And that's when they really get off the rails. Your guy's upset, your opponent's upset, people in other areas are upset when you start asking the question of, this is all well and good, but who pays for it? That's where the rubber meets the road.
Well, and I just had my last forum on Tuesday where it was very respectful, but I really wanted to engage in a true debate to be able to hash out the issues. And I was frustrated because there's so much that I want to be able to say. There's so much that we've done that are good things that people don't know about. But I got to thinking about it that night at the library. I was surrounded by most of my prior opponents. There was only one that wasn't there, but that one has given to one of my other opponents recently. So he's been active. And I looked back at when I was first elected at the reasons that people said no to Paul Seaton. At the time, he was saying, hey, we need to give more money to education. We need to forward fund because, they just need more. But you're going to have to give up your dividend, and we're going to institute a state income tax, and we're going to tax the oil companies more. But once we do that, everything will be great. You just need to give a little bit more, and it'll be fine. And we also had the soft on crime bill. People were being ravaged by their, property theft. And people were saying, no, this is absolutely unacceptable. And he was not representing someone who sits on the right, a Republican. And the voters of my district said, no, we're done. We're not going to take it anymore, because I came and said no to an income tax. I said I would repeal SB 91. I would look at reforms in education and look at all of the options in education. And I was going to defend the dividend. And I've continued to do that year after year. Well, I look at my opponents, and the 2 years prior to defeating Paul Seaton, he put up his girl, their shining star, the borough assembly president. I defeated her on the same issues. After that, Paul Seaton put up his longtime legislative staffer, same issues. Defeated him. And this year, we have yet another borough assembly president. And so I want to tell the people, this candidate isn't just the neighbor next door. This is wash, rinse, and repeat. They are the same agenda, all forwarded by Paul Seaton and his people, the same labor unions and NEA talking points, all funded by the same machine, the same voters who are trying to defeat the work that we've done. So I want to tell the people, I've stood against the state income tax. I've stood against the dangerous defined benefits that we can't afford, and a lot of the leftist agenda that they keep trying to push, not only on the entire state, but in our schools. And so this is where I need the people to come, make sure they go vote early, get to the polls no later than Tuesday, and vote for common sense, because they are running for the goalpost in the state of Alaska right now and telling you anything you want to hear. But I've been consistent in my message, in my positions, because I'm representing you.
I will say that one thing you have to admit about Paul Seaton when he was running, at least he was honest about, I'm going to take your dividend, I'm going to tax you, I'm going to do. At least he said who was going to pay. He just found that it was unpalatable to the electorate, and ever since then, everybody's just kind of schmoozed that under the carpet, right, under the radar. Oh, we're going to talk about the benefits, but we're never going to talk about the costs of it. So I mean, I do give him that. I admire him for that. He at least came out and said, we're going to give you all these bells and whistles, but it's gonna cost you. And that's when he got shot down. And I think you're 100% right. The reason you won is because you came out and said no, because we can't afford this and this and this, and here's why, and everything else. And ever since then, and you've seen it across the state, we're seeing it in other parts of the state as well, where they're like, oh, we want this and we want this, and new child care and new benefits and new, all this other spending and bells and whistles. And people are like, okay, but who pays is the big question, and they keep avoiding that question. And that's quite honestly, even your fellow representative Ben Carpenter is facing that kind of in the peninsula as well, because he's at least got a fiscal plan that's whole and encompassing, that does include, yes, a potential for a tax, but in combination with other things. And his opponent is out there banging the fear drum of the taxation and everything else. But the question is, again, who pays for all this? We eventually pay one way or the other, and we've got to address it. We've got to come up with a long-term fiscal plan, right?
Absolutely, and that's what I've talked about. That was one of the questions, and I appreciated the question at my last forum, because people aren't looking at a balanced approach. They think, well, we can go after industry, and obviously the oil companies are usually the first that people attack because they're the big money maker. But people need to understand, here on the Kenai Peninsula, we need oil and gas development to cook in, not only for our energy, but it pays 25% of the property tax. If they go away, that property tax will then be distributed to the people, and your property tax will see a dramatic increase. So we need to make sure that we have a good relationship with them. And I'm not talking pandering, because they're what they produce for Alaska is absolutely beneficial to us. And when we have oil flowing through the pipeline, that's when the state of Alaska makes money that pays for all of the goodies. And that's strengthening our economy. When we're able to develop our natural resources in a responsible way, the state of Alaska is making money that pays for all of the roads and the schools and things like that. And we need that fiscal plan to make sure that we aren't going to continue in the boom and bust.
Sarah Vance is our guest, candidate for State House in District 6 down in the Lower Peninsula. We're going to continue with her here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes on Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the commercial break right now. Yeah, yes, I'm still fighting the cold for sure. Okay, so I'm going to sidebar away from Sarah for just a second here because Kyle, he says no taxes and a statutory dividend. Then who pays for government? We would pay for government the way we paid for government the last 40 years, Kyle. We'd live within our means in the take from both the oil companies and from the draw from the earnings reserve, the 50% that the government is allowed. We'd live within our means. I mean, are you saying that we should have both taxes and no statutory dividend? That's how we should pay for government? Is that what you're saying? Because we lived that way for 40 years with no taxes and a statutory dividend, and we did okay, even though we were overspending. We spent ourselves into this position. We spent ourselves into a corner, but we did this for 40 years. Who pays for government? We're paying with the stealth tax of the money that's going directly to the government, instead of passing through our hands as resource owners. I've advocated for years that what they should do is that they should just put all the royalty into the hands of Alaskans and then tax them. Because you know what would happen? The spending in this state would come to a screeching halt. Because when they figured out that they got a big check for, $60,000 for a family of 4, and they're like, oh man, look at us, high cotton. And then the state issued them a bill for $57,000 for a family of 4, or $56,000. And that was the tax bill every year. The spending would come to a screeching halt because they're like, wait, I didn't get no $55,000 worth of services. I'll take the 60 grand and do it myself. Sorry, Sarah, I didn't mean to cut into your time there, but that's just, again, that's part of the problem. We lived this way for 40 years where we had no taxes and a statutory dividend, and we did okay. It's because of the mismanagement and the overspending. That's what's going on. I mean, that's part of the problem. Anyway, that's sorry. Go ahead. I'm not on cold medicine yet, and I'm sure it's going to help. So we'll go on from there. Anyway, Sarah, how you been? How's the constituency out on the road? How's the, I love to ask, when you go door to door, what are the things that the people are talking about out there on the road? Not what you're bringing to them, but what are they talking about?
There hasn't been a huge singular issue other than keep doing what you're doing. I've had a lot of people realize how dirty it is. I mean, the vitriol is so high everywhere. And people are just saying, thank you. They're saying, I'm so glad you're doing it because I don't want to do it. And I have had more of what people call the social issues come to the forefront. And, I have a passion for justice and defending the vulnerable. And I've had parents come to me and say, hey, did you see that headline that Homer Police Department was talking about with the youth? And that was my daughter. And saying, please don't give up on the work that you're doing. And that's the kind of stuff that just, it makes me cry. And when I go, man, I don't know if I want to keep doing this, because, you take a beating and you work really hard on things that are important, and politics get in the way, and someone decides to stomp all over a really good bill, right? And I thought, you're right, I can't give up because it's hard, or politics. That's just part of the job. I need to continue to do the work for the people because they need someone to fight for them. So I'm going to continue to advance bills that are hard topics. The stuff that's going on in the schools that people don't like to talk about, the issues that are facing our children. That's what I've been hearing a lot about. Families are saying, we are tired of all of the noise. Girls are girls, boys are boys, and we shouldn't have them in mixed spaces, uninvited.
Right. No, that's a non-starter for me, that issue. Of course, that was never a starter for me anyway, because I homeschooled all my kids. But if it would have been a non-starter for me from the very beginning as well. All right, we're going to get into some of the issues, and I want to talk specifically a little bit about this Cook Inlet oil and gas thing, because there's a new article out about this, and I know we disagreed a little bit on this last time, so let's start there. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
That guy is so mean, man. He's so mean. All right, we're continuing now. Sarah Vance is our guest candidate for reelection, House District 6 down in the peninsula. Sarah, we were just talking about, kind of a recap of how the campaign's been going and everything else, but I want to get into some of the issues. And one of the things that last time you and I talked, we had a disagreement a little bit, because I'm frustrated over this whole thing with the Cook Inlet and the oil and gas, or the gas thing, the LNG thing, because the problem is we're hearing about, there's a shortage, and it seems like the only answer that anybody wants to come up with on the utility side and the oil company side, and is being echoed by many people in the legislature, is that, well, we need some kind of royalty relief, we need a subsidy, we need a credit, something along those lines, instead of addressing the issue of importing LNG. And again, the question comes back to who pays for this. If it's a credit, if it's a royalty credit, we still pay, right? Because that's the problem, is if you issue a credit for, now somebody says, well, they're not drilling now, and if it would just be no, that would be projected revenue that would come in, and they build a budget based on projected revenue. So if the revenue doesn't come in, it has to be offset somewhere else by something else coming in. And if it's a credit instead of royalty relief, then they have to pay a tax credit on things that they do. So that's real cash out of the pocket. And the question is it really government's job to be involved in those kind of things? Do the people, because either the people are going to pay through higher rates, or they're going to pay through a taking of the PFD or more taxes, or again, Hillcorp, and they are getting the $100 million free ride all the time. And then, of course, the big question is, if it's cheaper to import the gas, even in the short run, and by short run, I mean 10-year type cycle, why wouldn't we be talking about that in real terms rather than just kind of pushing it off and stamping our foot and saying, no, it's got to be Alaska gas or else? If it's cheaper for us to bring it in the short term while we wait for the economics of the rest of the inlet to work out, why wouldn't we do that?
Well, I just want to clarify, I am not for any subsidies or cash credits. Alaskans have said we don't want to do that. I'm looking at equalizing the royalties. We have, as far as I know, 3 producers in the Cook Inlet. 2 of them are smaller corporations. They pay a higher royalty than Hillcorp. If we were to just equalize that for, say, 10 years, then that makes it more economically viable to go after the resource. And the benefit is that we have our energy for Alaskans. And in that 10-year period, it could, a lot of changes could happen where we could take a look at it. But, we need that stability right now. The gas is there. We have everything in place. We just need to make it pencil out financially. And if we can equalize that royalty, we're not doing credits or anything like that. It's a simpler approach, and we can get the production going. We don't have to build new infrastructure. If we were to import natural gas, there has to be new infrastructure. And the fear is that it wouldn't be temporary and that it wouldn't benefit Alaskans in the long run. So I haven't seen the new article that you have. Oil and gas is not my bailiwick. So I'm open to listening to the people who are the boots on the ground. This is their everyday job. Absolutely. But I want to have solutions that we need for today. We can't wait. We have producers. They're Alaskan companies. Let's figure that out. I don't like the government being involved in this, but we do have our finger on what the royalties are that is prohibiting them from being able to make it work out financially. So that we do need to get out of the way. And if we can provide that gas that makes it workable for Alaskans, that's a benefit. It doesn't necessarily have to be cash in the pocket for the state for it to be a benefit.
When you're talking about equalizing, I mean, the three companies, Hillcorp's one of them, and then the other two, is it because of their corporate structure? Because, I mean, I think that's one of the things that people are kind of raising their eyebrows about is because of corporate structure. Hillcorp gets a better deal than anybody else. Are you talking about equalizing so that everybody pays lower rates or higher rates, or what are we talking about here?
Well, the two smaller companies, my understanding is that the two smaller companies pay a higher royalty right now than Hillcorp. So if we just bring those down to the level of Hillcorp for a short amount of time, like the 10 years that I talked about, maybe that would cause things to be able to work, to be able to get the natural gas producing to where we can use it for the Cook Inlet. I'm not talking about a huge restructure. I'm talking, something simplistic. And this is my simplistic approach, who does not sit on resources committee. I'm not oil and gas. I'm just trying to look at, not everything has to be a complete rewrite. Not everything has to be complicated. We don't have to try and reinvent the wheel every time we have a problem. And that's part of the reason that oil companies don't want to do business in Alaska, is because we keep messing with everything. We need stability, and we need to create a structure that makes it inviting, where we're getting the benefit, they're getting a benefit. But right now, we need production. And that's what's hurting Alaskans the most. We are paying for it with our high utility cost. People are just looking at the royalty that comes in the state. We're suffering right now. The fact that we're talking about importing natural gas when we are awash with natural gas in the state of Alaska is absolutely insane in my mind. It shows how inept we have been to prepare for the future. So that's why I want to oppose natural gas, if at all possible, because we have it right here. And I just feel like if we were to import natural gas, that it would not be short term, because people will take the path of least resistance because they're just lazy. Human nature will just let it ride.
Well, but I mean, I would make that. I mean, I agree that this is an emotional thing more than anything else, that we are frustrated. We got 100 trillion cubic feet of gas on the North Slope. We got a pretty significant stuff still in the Cook Inlet, even though it hasn't been economically viable to draw it out right now. But it all comes back to the economics. It's the same thing as to why we don't produce all of our food here in Alaska anymore. Matsu used to be the breadbasket of the state. All the stuff happened here. Why has it been reduced? Because it was cheaper to import it, and that's how you could keep more people staying here, is because the food was cheaper to import. It's the same kind of argument. And there's already the facility down there on the north, or down there on the peninsula, the Marathon facility, where they've talked about how that can be reversed. Instead of being an export, it can be a gasification facility, and they can store it there. It's with a $20 million investment or something, but they don't have to rebuild all the infrastructure. So there's arguments for both. And I understand you're not an oil and gas wonk, and really neither am I, but I'm just looking at it. At some point, if it pencils out that it's cheaper in the 10-year window to make it happen, until the economics work out, should we be trying to force the economic? I guess this is the big question. I apologize again. My head is a little stuffy, and I'm trying to put all my thoughts together here. But the biggest question is, should we try and force the economics of oil and gas into place when the market says it's not viable? If the market says there's not enough gas there, or it's not advantageous for us to do it, and the private industry doesn't want to do it, should we have the government come in and try and force all the factors into play and put money into it to make it economic, just so that we can burn Alaska gas versus burning gas that's been imported from somewhere else?
I think government needs to, usually the answer is government needs to get out of the way, right? That's usually the first answer that I want to look at. But are we factoring in all of the economics? Because when we produce oil and gas in the state of Alaska, we're looking at our long-term economic health. We're not just looking at what the market says today, because as you know, markets change quickly. We could take all this time, get this big plan, and by next year, the markets could shift dramatically. When we are able to produce for ourselves, then we know when we can turn that spigot on and when we can turn it off. If we're relying on another company and another country to import our natural gas, we're at their will. And that's not a place of security that I want Alaska or the United States to be. So I'm looking at all of the pieces. As a leader in the state of Alaska, I want to make sure I'm looking at the long-term benefit in every aspect, not just what the market and the peninsula is saying today. What's the economic turnover of those dollars in our state to build a strong economy? And this goes back to, how much we pay for government and all the wants and the needs. When we have a strong economy and people have good jobs, they rely on government services less. Right now, a third of Alaskans are on welfare. That is our largest budget item by far. And that's only increased under Governor Walker. We have moved into a socialistic mindset. We're relying on government to do things for us that we should be doing for ourselves. But we have to build a strong economy so that we are self-sufficient, and then we can reduce the size of government. But it cannot come without building a strong economy and making sure that we provide a good groundwork for the economy to build on. And usually that means government needs to reduce regulation and get out of the way.
Well, you and I are in 100% agreement with that. The government and the biggest, you want to solve this issue. And I actually talked my friend JD Tuchilli from Reason Magazine into writing about this. If you wanted to solve this issue, just get a permanent exemption for Alaska on the Jones Act or repeal it completely. Yes. Because you could liquefy the gas on the North Slope and bring it around past Nome and bring it in. Right. We'd be importing our own gas in LNG tankers. We just don't have any U.S. flagged LNG tankers. That would solve the problem today. Correct. We could hire a ship tomorrow and get things going. I mean, and probably have to bolster the liquefaction plant up on the North Slope. But we could that would be it. Boom, you're done. And then we could have our own gas. We wouldn't have to build a multi-billion-dollar pipeline from the North Slope across the tundra and everything else. We could get it done. This is part of the problem, is government is in the way. And it's a frustrating deal. All right. I want to give you a chance here. Education, you've mentioned it. What I've only got about 90 seconds here. So I want to talk about education. I want to talk about whatever else you want to talk about in the final segment. But education, what is your solution for education? Give us a tease before we go to break, and then we'll come back. So what, of all the things that we talked about, and we know that if you don't support the education the way they want it supported, that you hate children and you eat puppies for breakfast. Delicious. But what is your tease here for what do we do next?
Well, aside from money, we need to make sure our kids are in the classroom. Our truancy rate is abysmal, and we need that involvement. The kids can't be learning if they're not in the classroom. So that's something that everyone cares about. And I worked on a bill that would create a partnership with parents and teachers on how to get kids in the classroom.
All right. Sarah Vance is our guest. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll let her expand on that and then anything else she wants to hit on as we return. It is the Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return with Sarah Vance in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Back with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Timothy was like another country like Texas when she was talking about bringing gas in and being at the whim of another country. That's the problem, Timothy, is that we couldn't get gas from Texas or Louisiana or anywhere else in the United States that has gas, because we have no American-built and flagged and crewed LNG tankers in the world. There's not a single American-flagged LNG tanker in the world, so you could not bring it from Texas or any U.S. port to Alaska, because that's the Jones Act. That's what we've been talking about. That has been the biggest thorn in our side for so many reasons and for so many ways. I mean, that would solve the problem today. If we could get a permanent exemption or waiver, just like they did for Puerto Rico when they got hit, the hurricanes and all that kind of stuff, they got a suspension of the Jones Act for a period of time so that they could ship stuff into Puerto Rico because they did not have enough ships to do it. American flag ships, because that's what the Jones Act says. You can't ship from American ports to American ports without it being an American ship. So you couldn't hire. And we don't build ships anymore in America, not like we used to. We build a quarter of 1% or something of all the ships that we used to. Anyway, that's a whole nother subject there. So let me see what else is going on. Sarah, I hope you're a great legislator. I hope you all return her. She works hard for the people. Terry says forensic audit for every school district to find the waste. Go back over here. But if there was a market for the product, they will get to market guaranteed, one way or the other, legal or otherwise. See also Iranian and the Russian oil, small arms, fentanyl, Cuban cigars. Yeah, I mean, if you really want to get the stuff to market, it will be there. It will be there for sure. All right. So that's I guess I'm caught up on all that kind of stuff. Scrolling backwards here real quick to see if there's any other questions for Sarah here in the chat room real quick. Kevin even says it doesn't pencil out with the Jones Act in play back in the, yeah, that's exactly what we've been saying. That's been part of the problem. Although, Sarah, I don't share your same fear. I'll be honest. I don't share the same fear. I don't share your same fear that we would be cut off by somebody else, because again, same thing's going on with food. Same thing's going on with a lot of other imports. And with most of these countries, you're making a contract, and the contract's enforceable by law. And so they have to do it. They have to deliver. And it's not like we would make a deal with Russia or somebody to get gas. But, you know, I'm not as worried about that, I think, as most people are, especially if we still have the Cook Inlet as a backup.
Well, I think we've seen some interesting times. I mean, don't you remember during COVID when the governor got a phone call from the Port of Seattle and said, we may not be shipping you may not get a barge of food and supplies.
Right. No, there are supply chain issues. I'm not saying not, but I'm just saying the implication that somehow bad actors would say, we're not shipping it to you because we hate you, or you offended us or something.
You know, I think at this point in the game, anything's possible. And I think we need to be watching our back a lot more in this global environment. And it just doesn't make sense to import when we have so much already. Just like we've again seen the reality. We need to be producing our own food. And we get to control the quality. We get to control, it's close. We have a closer relationship to our farmers, and we know, if we have an issue, we can trace it back to, and we can create the accountability for ourselves. We can do that for oil and gas. And this is something that is also a moneymaker. If we build the LNG pipeline and export, and obviously this isn't a today solution, but we do that, then we're not only heating our own homes, but we are exporting that and bringing more revenue to the state of Alaska. So I'm looking at solutions for today and tomorrow. You know, I'm so tired of Alaska just dreaming and doing, and we get so close to walking it out, and then we give up, or we put money to boondoggle things and we collapse it because, we don't bring in people who know what they're doing. And Alaskans have given up a lot of hope because we have not been faithful to really look at the economy of things and just pull the trigger. If we had put the LNG pipeline in when we put in TAPS, what was that, 35, 40 years ago?
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right.
Ago?
If we had done that along the same lines, we wouldn't be having that argument. But again, This is the same argument we've been having the whole time. And yes, I would love to see Alaska be food sustainable where they built. But again, it's it's economics. It was cheaper for people to bring food up. And that's how we've retained more people in the state, because otherwise, if it was still just only food in the state, it would be that much more expensive because of the cost and everything. I mean, that's what the whole thing with the worldwide free market, that's what it brings to the table. And that's what we keep fighting against emotionally. And I mean, I support local farmers. I buy local produce. I buy whatever I can from the local people. But it's also cheaper to buy a hunk of ham from that came up from the lower 48, and I use that as well. You can't just be one or the other. It's got to be a blend of all of it, and that's what we need to look at. They're letting the free market rule in that regard. All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there, but we are coming up against it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Sarah Vance, our guest.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, welcome back to the program. We're continuing now. Sarah Vance is our guest. We're talking about education was our last topic before we went to the break. I was asking her, well, what's your solution to this? Because again, it's going to come back up in this next session. It's not like we're against funding education. We've funded education, I mean, exponentially over the last 40 years in this state, but we keep getting poorer results. And it's not that we hate children. It's not that we love puppies for breakfast. It's that we like to have some accountability. So the question is, Sarah, how do you fix this? What's your solution for the educational problem out there? Is it more money? Is it consolidation? Is it auditing? Is it, what is it? What's the solution here?
Well, I think parents are the solution. When we look at how the schools were run and who had the responsibility of educating the children before the socialistic model came to the United States about 100 years ago, it was the parents who taught their children. They built a community school, and the parents hired the teachers. Now, obviously, we have moved to a larger model, and it's funded by government. It's in our Constitution. But parents are still the key to a great education for our students. Now, we don't have a model parent for every student. However, when we have that engagement and we show the parents that there's a value to their education, that they will, in a good relationship, they will make sure that those kids are in school. Alaska has one of the worst truancy rates. Kids are simply not in the classroom. And I think a lot of it is that parents aren't seeing the great value of academics. In our culture, we've talked more about sports and the extracurricular and all of those other things. And we haven't focused on the importance of a strong academic education, reading, writing, arithmetic. And we need to go back to that and the value that it brings and the stability and creating a good relationship, not this, oh, my school is the best and they never do anything wrong, but the value of what they're getting and the encouragement to read with your kids, check up on them, do their spelling. My children are homeschooled. My mom took over homeschooling, and I tell you, she runs a tight ship. She told them, she said, if you get below a 70, you're considered failing, and we're going to do it again. Boy, did they want to make sure that they work hard for her, because they know that she expects the best out of them, and they believe they can do anything. And when they're struggling through a subject, my mom's like, we'll get through it. We might have to do it again, but we'll figure it out. And I think we have to change that mindset that we have about our education system. Right. And that's going to come with the parents.
Well, I mean, I would agree. I mean, this is why charter schools have done so well academically, is because it's the engagement of the parents. Charter schools are, the parents help create them and they're running it, and it's part of it. I mean, it's why homeschooling is the ultimate kind of, student teacher ratio, because it's so low and it's direct parental involvement. I agree that parental involvement is the key to a successful education. The question is, how do you engage parents who are not engaged right now? Because that's, here we're talking about achievement, but I'm also talking about the costs of it. So how do we do it in a way that we engage the parents and still keep the costs as low as possible? And is there a way to do that, again, in consolidation of school districts or reducing of administrative costs? How do we make sure the money hits into the classrooms? But to your parental issue, how do we engage parents who are not currently engaged? That's the big $1 million question.
Well, there's going to have to be a concerted effort from the schools, and I'm not saying that they're not, because the parents, the teachers, and the schools do a lot. But making sure my office looked at different models around the nation, and some schools have a community engagement in the morning at the start of the school day, and sometimes that means breakfast or some type of activity in the morning that engages those families who need a little bit more assistance, and encouragement to get their child involved. It's amazing that relationship goes a long way. And when parents feel supported, especially when you have, single parents who are trying to make ends meet, when you're engaging in that way and showing them that you're going to be a support, that's going to be an incentive to help them get their kids there on time. And it's one of those frustrations that the teachers often talk about. And there's no way I'm against enforcing through legal means against parents. That's not an incentive to keep your kids in school, but showing that they really are important, because parents don't feel valued in the school system anymore. They feel like it's an us against them, and we have to change that mindset. But monetarily, when we're talking about dollars and cents and impacting the state budget, I introduced House Bill 21, that's the school healthcare consolidation, that could save our school districts millions of dollars in healthcare cost. The Kenai Peninsula Borough School District healthcare went up 21% this recently. The cost of a family health premium right now is almost $1,000 a month. And my bill would allow the school district the option to consolidate under the state's healthcare plan that could save $6 to $8 million a year. That's the equivalent of $125 BSA, at least. And granted, that's just an estimate, but that's something that's reducing the cost of education, and that's helping retain teachers.
Because sure, they get the same benefit, but it reduces the cost. I mean, why wouldn't we do this? It's the same question of why would we have 54 different administrations and school districts when maybe we could consolidate that down into, so you don't have to have the same, district heads, teachers, or administrators, duplication of effort. I mean, that's the thing. Those are all good reasons to do it. We got about 5 minutes here, Sarah. So I wanted to give you the floor for the final, what else are you going to be focusing on as you go back? What are your hot buttons? I want to give you a chance to talk about what you wanted to talk about, since I've been driving the bus here.
Well, I have so many hot buttons. I have so many irons in the fire. I need help to focus, because one of the things in this fall that I'm focusing on is the fishery. Every aspect of the fishery is suffering. It's important to our coastal communities and really Alaskans' way of life. The seafood industry is needing help, but really we need to understand what's going on with the fish. So I'm going to be focused heavily on the fishery this fall. I am a member of the seafood task force, and looking for solutions not only for today, but the long term and what we want our fishery to look like. I'm also going to be doing AI work and providing protections and boundaries on AI. That's something that is explosive, and it's kind of in the Wild West as far as AI generated images and the use of AI. And we need to have more conversations about what the balance of that is. And obviously, election integrity is very much at the top of people's minds. So right now, what I'm telling people is to go vote. You can go vote early, and you can go vote at the Homer City Hall, at the Soldovia City Hall, and the Soldotna Prep School in my district. And we need to flood this election with votes. We can't claim anyone cheats if we don't show up to the game. And that will help us establish a Republican majority so that we can work on election integrity issues again and make sure that you are confident that your vote will count.
I couldn't agree more. We need to, again, and just going back to the weather issues that we've had here in the state over the last 2 weeks, you don't want Tuesday to be some kind of, wicked ice storm where everybody has to stay home, or, people are having a hard time getting there. You want to just get it done right now. Anything else, Sarah, that you are going to focus on other than fisheries? Anything else that you want to highlight here?
One thing I just want to cheer on Representative McCabe introduced a bill that would create gold and silver as legal tender. And we were working on an amendment to create transactional gold. That is an exciting bill that would allow freedom with your money, because you would know that it's attached to real gold and silver and retains its value. That's something that I'm so excited that he's planning to introduce again, and I'm going to co-sponsor that and champion it. We need to do more things like that allow people the freedom to know that they hold their resource and their money. They can hold it in their hand, or they can put it in a bank and use it with a debit card. So there are real-time solutions that matter to the people and to the economy that we're going to be working on. So I just want to give people a little bit of hope that we're looking for things that are real-time, not just grand ideas, but things that are going to help you in your everyday life.
We need that. We need that, again, just kind of getting government out of the way in a lot of ways and being able to make sure that we can secure our own wealth, but however we need to do it. I agree. I think it's a good thing. All right, down to the last 2 minutes. So this is your final elevator pitch to people who may not have made up their minds. And there are a few people out there who are probably still on the fence. But, to people who haven't made up their minds, your elevator pitch, how do people find out more about you? Are you doing any meetings or anything between now and Election Day? Go ahead.
Well, I will be on Chat and Chew tomorrow at 11 o'clock, which is on Christian Radio. We meet at the Coffee Smith and live on the radio. I will be at several events this weekend. Norman Lowell is an amazing homesteading, an artist who homesteaded in Anchor Point. He has since passed, and his service is 2 o'clock at Chapman School on Saturday, and I will be attending that in honor of his incredible life. And just going out sign waving. If you want signs, I have signs for sign waving. I could use some great volunteers all across the district for people to get out and vote and make sure that they are ranking me as their common sense first choice candidate. If you have any questions, give me a call. I'm at 299-7368. You can text me. But please follow my social media pages, like and share them like crazy so people know the truth about what I'm doing and what I stand for.
All right, Sarah Vance, candidate for reelection in House District 6 down on the Southern Peninsula. Go out there and find out everything you need to know about Sarah. What's your website again, real quick?
SarahVance.org.
SarahVance.org. All right, Sarah Vance, thank you so much for coming on board and joining us. As always, it's a pleasure to talk with you. We appreciate it. Hold the line for just a second. Folks, we got more coming up. Hour 2 is dead ahead. Leslie Hajdukovitch will be joining us from Fairbanks to talk about her run for state senate. That's up next. Okay. All right, Sarah. Final bite at the apple. This is where you get a chance to talk about anything we didn't talk about or expand on anything that we did talk about. Although we probably beat most of my subjects to death. I'll give you the floor there.
Well, I want to encourage people to, across your listening area, because you go all the way to Fairbanks. We have some great candidates up there, and, cheer for these Republicans. I'm telling you, rank red and vote your conscience. We need a true Republican majority because the left is running for the goalpost, and they want to tax and spend, and they don't care how much it's going to cost. They want what they want, and they were within one vote of just completely breaking the bank. So, I encourage you to vote for Bart LeBon and Leslie up in Fairbanks and Frank. Tell you, Planned Parenthood has been attacking some of us, and it's a badge of honor. And I want to tell you that Planned Parenthood is trying to scare people into thinking that this election is about reproductive rights, about abortion. What they're really after is the puberty blockers after our kids. That's their next big moneymaker. And that's what this is really about, because they were campaigning against the girls in sports bill. And, they're mad. They're mad that we're taking a stand for common sense things that matter to people. So you get in there and fight for these great candidates, because it's really going to matter on common sense principles and the things that we value.
No, I mean, again, when you hit them in the moneymaker, that's when they get upset, and you could tell usually by that kind of stuff where stuff is going. All right, well, Sarah Vance, thank you so much for coming up and being part of it. As always, good luck for Election Day, and we'll visit with you again post-election and see where things are at. All right.
Sounds good, Michael.
Thank you so much for coming on board this early. I appreciate it. We'll talk with you again soon. Sarah Vance, our guest here on the program as we go through here. All right. Okay. Man, it's a rough one today. Rough one. You guys all ready here? Let me go back into the comments here and see what's going on. I see Leslie is in the chat in the green room already. She's already, man, she's Johnny on the spot. Or Leslie on the spot, one of the two. We'll get it going on here. All right, let's see if we can let's test it. Shall we test it? Let's test the audio, just make sure everything's good. We'll test it with Leslie here right now. Good morning, Leslie. How are you?
Good morning, Michael.
All right, like you sound
Hello
good.
from beautiful Fairbanks.
I love Fairbanks. I love the people. I amend my statement. I love the people in Fairbanks. You guys can keep all that weather. I don't need any of that anymore. I'm done with that. All right. Yeah. Well, it's good to see you, Leslie. We're going to crack into this here in about 2 or 3 minutes. So if you hold on a second here, we'll be right back to you. I know we got you till the bottom of the hour, and then you're going to go out and wave some signs. So we'll we'll be back to you here in just a second. I'll put you on hold. You can get a cup of Joe, and we'll be right back to you. All right, Leslie's going to be joining us here in just a second as well. I'm going backwards here. Donna says, thank you for your hard work and principled leadership, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah Vance. I'm just scrolling through the comments here. Barbara said, could you include silver in that specie bill? It was a gold and silver bill, Barbara. It was both gold and silver in Kevin's bill, which I'm sure is going to be reintroduced this year, even though it was killed by Kawasaki this last go around because I just don't think he understood it. He just didn't understand the bill is my feeling on it. I'm scrolling backwards here. There's a lot of bloody blah blah. Okay. Ron says, we were talking about education. Ron says $22,000 per child. I think they have the funding. Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is an issue of funding. I think this is an issue of how is it being spent, and are they being, because again, Rob Myers was talking about it yesterday. We saw the explosive growth of student funding, and yet we saw the plummeting of the aptitude scores and the educational scores. That's the big problem there. Kyle, I do agree with you on this when she was talking about some of that stuff could be a moneymaker. When she was talking about like food made in the state could be a moneymaker, like Matt made. I mean, that's again, the government, it's got to be a free market issue. The government cannot prop that stuff up because they've tried it. Matt made the Barley Project, all these other kind of things. You've got to let the free market run those things. I'm in agreement with Kyle on that. Absolutely. All right. Now what else we got here? All right. We're back into the Jones Act stuff. All right. There we go. Okay. Well, we're going to continue on here. Leslie Hajdukovitch is our guest. We're going to, Brian says, good morning, Leslie. I like the button. Guessing it Kronk, but nice historical. It's the I like Mike. It was the Mike Kronk button, but it says I like Mike, and I like that. It's like the I pick Nick. I mean, I think there's been some really good, clever stuff that's been going on here this election cycle. That is, it's good stuff. I like it. All right. Yeah, he did take away the front license plates, and you could thank him for that. You could thank him for that, Harold. Facetiousness is astonishing. All right, we got to go. We're going to jump into this here. Hour one is over. Hour two is now. There we go. Back with more of the Michael Duke Show.
buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska. This is your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. Welcome back to the program, hour 2 of the big radio show. And we're getting right down to it. Our guest this hour is Leslie Hajdukovitch, who's running for election for state senate up in the interior. And she's got a heck of a battle on her hands. It's gotten down and dirty. She's obviously ruffled some feathers. You only take flack when you're over the target, is what I always like to say. And that must be what's happening up in Fairbanks. Leslie Hajdukovitch joins us this morning to discuss. Good morning, Leslie. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. So great to be here with you this morning.
Well,
and
thanks.
yes, some feathers have been ruffled.
Yeah, no, I see that you are out there. You're making some people a little nervous, as they say. I'm feeling nervous because you're making some headway, and folks are not pleased about it. Let's talk a little bit about the overall tone of the campaign and what's being said and what you're fighting against up there. What's going on?
Yeah, first off, I just want to say, Michael, that this process, of course, I'm new to the state legislative campaign process, served on the school board here in Fairbanks, worked for Senator Sullivan previously, but this is my first run at the legislature. And it has, I just want to make sure everybody knows this has overall been a very positive experience. It really has been. I have so enjoyed getting out to meet Fairbanksans, I've knocked on hundreds of doors and just met with groups and reconnected with old friends and met new people. And so I want to make sure there's optimism in this message, because there really truly is optimism. We have great people in this state and in this town. And that has truly come out in this campaign process for me. Now the last couple weeks, to a month, not so much, and that's when I knew, I could be getting close here. So it started out with the DNC, the National Democrats, starting pretty major attack ads, thousands of dollars spent on my campaign. Also, they've targeted Bart LeBon, mailers, ads saying I'm dangerously extreme. Bad for Alaska. I don't like police. Don't care for nurses. All these, outrageous things. Don't like families. So, of course, all of those are not true. So that's kind of how it started. And that, I even asked my opponent, Scott Kawasaki, in a forum. You get a chance for a question, and I asked him, "Do you support these ads, and would you ask them to stop?" And he said, "I don't support them. I don't support negative campaigning. Yes, they should stop. We should not have outside dark money," which is what this is, campaigning in the state of Alaska. So I was like, great, sounds, it's my feeling also. But then he began doing it himself. So that's when I realized, that he's a disingenuous person, because he truly went low. And you've probably heard about this Hajdukovich tax, which is just, plain hogwash.
Right. Well, ironically, I had to have it explained to me. I'm like, what is Hajdukovich? I mean, if somebody has to, if they're trying to use some kind of buzzword and it's not easily accessible and understandable, and somebody has to explain it to you, then it's not as effective as it should be. And when
I
Yeah,
appreciated Rob Myers yesterday attempting to explain it. And
right.
I believe they just backed into it. They wanted to use the name Hajdukovich and tax in the same phrase, and they somehow backed into it and got to it in a very convoluted manner.
Right. Because I mean, you just participated in the defense of SB 21. You weren't you weren't leading the charge. You didn't organize the whole thing. You weren't,
No,
standing on your white charger. You were just part of the group of people helping out defending it, right? I
that's
mean, that was
right. And
yeah,
I stand by that. I stand by that
sure.
because that it was a ballot initiative. SB 21 was passed in the legislature, passed in the Alaska state legislature, and what it did was to stabilize our tax structure so that we remained open for business, which is what we
Right.
all want. And
Yeah.
then the ballot measure happened to try to repeal that. And so I stood up as an Alaskan, no dog in the fight for an oil company I was just here in Fairbanks. I'm, school board member, business owner with my husband and his family, and care about Alaska. So stood up for that. And then, the Alaskans spoke.
Right.
Alaskans spoke.
Well, that's the irony, is that by labeling this the Hajdukovich tax or whatever and vilifying you, he's vilifying all the Alaskans who voted against the ballot measure. And it was a pretty
Exactly.
substantial win on the ballot measure. So you're vilifying everybody who voted to keep SB 21 on the books. And that's just like, oh, okay. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right, fine. I
Yeah.
mean, if you want to vilify everybody, I guess that's one way to do it, but probably not the best way going on.
Absolutely.
Leslie, what are you seeing out there? You're out there talking to people. What are people concerned about in the legislature? What are they concerned about, especially in your district, under the current leadership? And what would you be addressing
Yeah.
as a new leader, as a new senator for your area? What would be the issues that your people care about?
Yeah, and that's the best question, because what door knocking and getting out in the community allows you to do, it allows you to hear from the Alaskans. It's not just my ideas of like, oh, I think we should do this, it's hearing from people. And what I heard is, education is on people's minds. It just absolutely is. I've heard from all sides of the issue, people who are really strong homeschool parents who want the ability to homeschool their kids, charter school parents and public school parents who are concerned about the public schools and funding and our education system. So that's absolutely on the mind of everyone. And really the main thing is just people paying their bills. It's the economy, it's energy prices. Do you know that in Fairbanks, our energy prices, the cost of energy has doubled since 2017? It's doubled. And that to me is, that's why people don't have money in their pockets. It's like they're trying to fill the fuel tank. And then the PFD, it is, I had a woman, I was door knocking here in my neighborhood, Hamilton Acres, and I was out and around, and it was her son. And she, it's funny when people realize you're campaigning, and she grabbed me and she said, please protect the PFD. She grabbed my hand. And when you hear that from the people, I'm listening. I'm listening to it all. So those are the issues that I think are really on the top of people's minds here in Fairbanks, and just wanting a strong economy, wanting Fairbanks to they want to live here. They want to continue to live here.
No, I agree. That's the biggest thing. It was one of the biggest reasons why I left Fairbanks was the cost of 10 years ago. I left Fairbanks because of the cost of energy. It was one of the big prime factors to get me out of there. And I saved, the first 8 months, I saved almost $5,000 in energy costs, and that was 10 years ago. And if it doubled since 2017, hallelujah, you get yourself a raise. People are frustrated, and it's definitely a hurting thing. And of course, education and the PFD, both big issues as well. As far as the PFD, what is your support? Where do you stand? Should we have a full statutory PFD? Should we be pushing for a Hammond style 50-50 where the state gets 50% and we get the 50%, the full 50%, instead of this pick your number every year that the legislature's doing? What is your position on that?
Yeah, and it's the question on everybody's minds. It's the issue, and I know you talk a lot about it on your show. I would love a full PFD, of course. And I want to go back to my time raising a family and work my husband and his family and supporting them in their small business. Those PFDs were so important to us. And people think, oh, you've had success, and it's like, yeah, we have success, but please don't forget from whence I came. And I understand that. I understand that. So it's the topic that will be debated. And if, if the statutory amount is not being followed, okay, let's look at changing the statute.
Right.
That's where I sit, and I will enter the game if elected.
Do you, I mean, so if the statutory amount, either pay the statutory amount because it's on the books, or even if we have to change it to a 50, would you support the 50-50 idea? Because right now they're taking the 50-50 and they're taking a big chunk of it, right? Would you support a 50-50 payout of the PFD?
And I know, Michael, I knew you were going to, you're going to push for this on your show. I appreciate the the intensity of it. And listen, I'm going to enter the game, and I'm going to look at all the factors, look at funding. I am a fiscal conservative. I truly am. I believe government will grow if left unchecked. And I understand this is, the founders, my grandmother was one of 6 women on the Constitutional Convention. And I'm so proud of her and beginning, our statehood. And I understand Jay Hammond's vision. I was listening yesterday to your show about how, or maybe it was Brad Keithley. I've love when he's on, Michael, and you guys go back and forth, and how, the spending when the permanent fund was before it was started, we were spending like crazy people. We were spending like crazy people. And so
Right.
the vision of making sure that people had a say and had their share. I understand that. Absolutely. So I'm going to go with that in my heart to the legislature.
All right. Leslie Hajdukovitch is our guest. We're going to continue here in just a moment. The Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Dukes Show. Radio.
All right, we're in the break with Leslie Hajdukovitch right now. We have her till just after the bottom of the hour, and then we're going to let her go. So we're trying to rush through some things here. But I will say, Leslie, it's people have said it in the chat room. That's kind of a non-answer, and I know that you're still, you want to enter the game, but what you're saying is you want to enter the debate over which payout to do, or you support a paying out of the PFD essentially, right? But you haven't decided
absolutely. And I'm reading the chats.
Okay.
I get it. Answer the question, lady.
Well,
I'm seeing it. And,
yeah.
And listen, I am entering the game. And of course I would love a full PFD. Okay. Where do we cut to get that? And
well, that's the thing. How do we pay for it, right? Because the problem is that they keep saying it's a revenue problem, but it's a spending problem. We've had a spending problem in the state for years. You were talking about drunken sailors. They were spending money like crazy. And even when we had the PFD, they kept spending them, and then they took the PFD and they kept spending. So do you think there's the political will to cut back enough to have a statutory PFD? Or is there even the political will to cut back enough to have a 50-50 PFD? Do you see that happening?
That is the question. And, and in the people that you've had on before, and I loved hearing Sarah Vance and her, her comments on everything, on importing LNG, and the gas line. And I'd like to get into some of those things, but I have seen good people go to Juneau and attempt to cut spending, and I'm going to be one of those good people. And I am going to go down there, roll up my sleeves, and see where we can cut. But I also know good people who have been there. It's a tough road. Julie Colomb, I loved how she described her, her attempts at cutting. It's tricky, it's difficult, and it's almost has to come in statutory changes to to policy in order to get those cuts. And so I'm ready to go. And I just want to say, I mean, the main thing I'm focused on right now is winning this election.
Right.
Right. That's what's before me. Also, I loved, okay, he's right here. I like Mike. That's we had this fantastic, I want to talk about it, on the air, but fantastic rally last night here with Senator Sullivan. Just wonderful.
Well, I mean, it's good. I mean, focusing on the election is good, but again, these are the important issues for your constituency, and I'm hoping that you find that you get a solid answer, and we find some answers as to how we can do it. Because you're right. I mean, the PFD is important to the economy, to entrepreneurship, to people who are trying to just live here. It is a critical issue, and we need to have need to get a solid handle on that and figure out what the actual answer is. We'll talk about LNG when we return to the radio here in a minute. I also, since you spent so much time on the school board, and I want to talk with you a bit about the solution for education that we saw here. The answer seems to always be more money, but is that the real answer? And then we could talk about the oil and gas or the gas situation, and then before we let you go. So I'm just
and I want to talk to you about this campaign, Michael, if you'd allow me, just really what
Sure.
I'm experiencing and the nastiness. I mean, one of the things is people are tired of this nastiness, and one of the things that I'm hearing from people out in the community, the negativity does not work, and people want to elect people who are willing to work with others and to do it in a positive manner, and that is me.
No, there's a backlash to that, and I think anybody who goes negative is going to experience, especially today where we're kind of we're getting into a hypersensitivity area. If you start going negative, it's going to backlash against you, and I think you're seeing that with things like Peltola and everything, even the outside money. People are getting mad about it because they're like, I don't want to be told what to believe, and you're being nasty, and it turns people off. And I think that actually works out in our favor for more conservative folks, that it works out in our favor. All right, we're 15 seconds out. We'll jump in here and get started. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We got about 8, 9, 10 minutes here with Leslie, and then we're going to cut her loose. So here we go. Keep sharing, like and share. There you go. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's get to it. Here we go. Jumping back into it right now.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Yep, that's me. Welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Duke Show. Leslie Hajdukovitch is our guest. She's a candidate for state senate in the interior. Leslie, before we jump into, I want to talk about education and the gas issue real quick. We don't have a lot of
Michael,
time.
I want to talk really quick. I just want to show you this. This is the opinion page in the News Miner, and I want to read from it. It says negative political ads poison the campaign trail.
Right.
And this is from the actual News Miner. Talks about outside dark ads that are, influencing Alaska elections. Equally disappointing is that some candidates are not innocent bystanders. By approving these ads, they show they are willing to win at any cost. That is my opponent, even if it means dragging their opponents through the mud and alienating voters. And that's what we've been experiencing. And this guy, Scott Kawasaki, he's been in office for 18 years. He has no record to run on. And so his only option is to attack. And that's what he's done. He has introduced over 150 pieces of legislation in 18 years and passed only 6. And in addition, he's never held any significant leadership positions, even in his own party, in those 18 years. I mean, it is astounding. It is astounding.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, when you look at it and you look at the records. I mean, I'm not one to say that an adequate or a good legislature is one who passes lots of bills. But if you've been there that long and you're trying to get, and again, the bills are none of them are what he campaigned on. He originally campaigned on the PFD and some other things, but he still failed to deliver. And in fact, has voted against it on several occasions. So
Right.
it's a frustrating thing. Go ahead.
And I want to respond. Somebody says, I don't think anyone who cares about negative campaigning compared to the issues politics is tough. Okay, good point. But let me say this. When people are dragged through the mud, other good people don't want to run. That's what it is. And I've talked to so many people who have thought about running and they don't want to put themselves in that position. And I'm finding it's like, here I am, I'm here. And, and I'm standing up to this bully. And he is a bully who's been there too long.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's deal real quick with education, because education, you were on the school board, you were president, you know these issues. This issue came up and the answer always seems to be more funding. Is it more funding, or is that funding going into infrastructure and administration instead of into the classroom? What are the things that could be done to improve education? I mean, we're spending $20,000+ per student, 22,000, something like that. Is it really about funding, or is it about efficiency with what we're doing? Do we need to consolidate? Do we need to, like Sarah talked about, consolidate healthcare? Do we need to, reduce overhead and put more money into the classroom? What's the solution here?
Yeah. And that's, our education landscape has changed. It has absolutely changed. It is, it's everything. It's not just the publics, the brick and mortar public schools. It's that now charter schools, which are doing great. But those charter schools are also where the parents, it's kind of a choice school. So the parents who want their kids to go there, choose that, and are able to put their kids there. Homeschooling, absolutely. Private schooling. So, I've talked to our superintendent and I kind of asked him this question. I said, how do we manage this? It's become a different landscape. And he said, we move forward, we continue offering the choice, which is what parents want, and we keep working to raise the standard. He also had a great community perspective here in Fairbanks, and he said he's all about holding schools accountable, but you have to know what is that measure. What is that measure, so that public schools know what that measure is, so they can work to achieve it. When I was on the school board, we talked all the time about raising student achievement. I mean, it was the number one thing. Whenever we'd get off track talking about something, we would bring it back to, okay, student achievement. How is it affecting the classroom? Raising the graduation rate, lowering the dropout rate, closing the achievement gap. So those are all things. And I see Melissa Burnett, who is our new school board president here in Fairbanks. I see she commented, and I know Melissa's going to do a great job here in Fairbanks. And I think, we have to give a modest increase to the BSA. There's not been an increase to the BSA in, I don't know how long, 10 years. I think that's warranted. And I think that, but it has to have accountability measures.
And what were those? I mean, again, accountability. You talk about parents, and I agree, parental involvement is key. But there are a selected number of parents out there who are just not going to be engaged, and that's just how it is.
Can't be.
Well, can't be or can't be, I guess. I mean, it's always a choice whether, but again, the state can't necessarily force that. So we've got to find other ways to do it. And so the question again becomes, is it because we've seen again, the overhead go up and up and the student count go down and down. And so the administrator count still goes, how do we make it more efficient? We poured more money into it, and yet our graduation rate remains, back to Sarah Palin days, it's still within just a couple points of that. 1 in 4 is still not graduating. What do we do to fix that?
And here in Fairbanks, here's where we've found ourselves. Enrollment has declined because our populations have declined. Inflation, everything costs more now, and so we've had to close schools. I mean, it is as tough as it is, we have to become more efficient. And I think
that's common sense. That means
common sense.
If you have fewer students and you've got 50%, fill rates in your schools, you need to consolidate schools and close some.
Yeah.
That's just the long and the short. You can't get emotional about it.
No.
You've got to make it make sense. And yes, I know people get upset, but you can't control how many people are in town or how many kids are enrolled. You can only do what you can do, right?
Right. And our neighborhood school, Nordale Elementary, which all three of my boys went there, it was hard because they didn't close it. They made it the center of homeschool students, which is great. It's wonderful. But, it was a tough thing for sure. And things like closing Eielson was a difficult choice that our school district made. So I get it. And it's tough stuff. And I just applaud anybody who has run for the school board. And I know Loa Carol Hubbard has run, and she's, we've got some good people there. I'm just really thrilled that Melissa is leading the charge on our local school board.
All right. Final topic before we let you go, because I know you got to go wave signs.
I got to wave signs. I got to get out there.
The gas things, the gas stuff, the gas shortage. Now that doesn't necessarily affect the interior, except for the rail belt, except for the rail belt power. Rail belt power. Right. I mean, there is a cost. There's some things there. But what are your thoughts on that? You wanted to talk about the gas issue real quick.
I did want to talk about it. And I appreciate your sentiment, Michael, where you say, you just talked about it with Sarah Vance. It becomes kind of an emotional issue because for Alaskans, we're like, oh gosh, here we are. We've got gas on the slope. And to think about importing it, it's nobody likes that thought. And so I appreciate that sentiment because you have to take the emotion out of it in some of these decisions that come up. But we're absolutely affected. And, we're looking at, IGU here in Fairbanks is looking at expanding their natural gas. My husband and I, we converted our furnace to natural gas. I don't know right now if we're actually saving or even if we've paid off the conversion, but we're looking at trucking from the North Slope. That's what IGU is looking at. So, but Fairbanks has experienced high energy costs for decades.
Right.
And I am going to Juneau looking for solutions. I truly am looking long-term and what is best for the state of Alaska as a whole, what's best for the interior of Alaska. And I just want to give one more shout out to the other people running. I'm running for Senate seat P against Scott Kawasaki. And my partners in this, Bart Laban is running in the downtown district against Maxine Dibert. Bart is ready to roll in the Fairbanks or in the Alaska legislature. He is ready to roll. And I just hope people will support him. Will Stapp is my representative and he does a great job. And it's just been a joy actually to campaign with both of them.
All right, Leslie, how do folks find out about you? Where do they go if they want to get more information? And are you doing any meet and greets or anything between now and Election Day?
Look for me out on the streets, and I'm going to be making phone calls also. And at www.leslieforalaskasenate.com is my website. You can reach me at 907-978-3822 or email me at Leslie at leslieforalaskasenate.com.
All right. You can email her and get her there. There's lots of questions in the chat room, Leslie.
I know. I'm looking at them.
Interior, how do we help interior wood burners? Are you going to work with a bipartisan caucus? I mean, there's lots of questions in there. So feel free to go back in there and answer any of those questions later on.
I'm going to try to do that, Michael. I just appreciate the time. And this process, we're in the democratic process right now. We're in it, Michael. And I hope we come out on top here in this election on Tuesday.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a hope. We're all got our fingers crossed. We'll see how it is. So get out, vote often, vote early. I'm going
to come back on here, Michael. I'm coming back on. I'm going to get elected, come back on.
All right. Well, good. Then maybe we'll have some more answers from you when we come back. And we'll talk about it then. All right. Leslie Hajdukovitch, thank you so much for coming on board the program today. We appreciate you being part of it.
Okay. Thanks, Michael.
All right. Thanks. Again, running for State Senate District P up there in the interior. It is Leslie Hajdukovitch. All right. So that leaves us with a little bit of time here to talk about some stuff and to go over that. I mean, I was hoping for a little bit more solid answers on the PFD. This is the same thing that Leslie and I talked about last time. And, you know, I respect that you have to go down there and integrate with people and have the conversation. But, you know, she did ask the prime question is, if you do get a statutory PFD, how do you pay for it? Which, I mean, that's the big question. Is there the political will to cut? She says she's one of the gals that's going to go down there and cut. She's one of the people. She's a fiscal conservative. She's going to go cut. But she can't do it alone, right? And that's been the answer from this program for years, is that, you know, we've wanted cuts. We've advocated for cuts. We advocated the cuts only approach on this program for years, to the point to where, I mean, it was pretty obvious that there was just no political will to make the cuts necessary to live within our means. So I don't know what the answer is here, other than I would like to say that, you know, with something like a true constitutional spending cap that would force the spending down, that's one way to do it. The other way is to starve them of money in such a way that they're forced to cut. Now, unfortunately, because our state draws the money directly from the resources and we don't, and not from the people directly, we don't really have a way to starve the beast, right? Because that's the other way to do it, is to starve the beast. We don't really have that way. So really our only solution is either electing a whole new raft of people and getting some of the business as usual crowd out of there, who are the bigger government, bigger spend mentality people who are getting the money directly, or to put in that, again, that constitutional spending limit that forces them to live within their means. But again, these are both very hard roads to hoe. One is near impossible. The other one is just improbable at this point. But we did it for years. We had both no taxes and a statutory dividend, and the state was able to survive for years. It's only because that we overspent that we are now in the crisis that we're at right now. Part of it has to do with the up and down motion of the oil and the resource costs. I mean, there's a significant portion of that, but that's one of the reasons why we don't talk about it much. But number 4 of the Charter of Changes, the fourth one on the Charter of Changes, is the wrong button. The fourth one on the Charter of Changes is the change the funding. And what I mean by that is we need to change the way that we fund the government. It should be run on a 4-year rolling average, or a 5-year rolling average of what our revenues are, instead of guessing every year, right? That's where we're at right now. We're guessing every year where it's going to be. And the problem is that we suck at guessing, or we're just building it based on this year's revenue. If we built it based on a 5-year rolling average of what the revenue was, it would take into account the highs and lows of those years, and it would make it much easier. But instead, we're just, we're in high cotton, we increase the spend. We're in low cotton, we're in full on panic mode. That's what's going on. And we need to stop that. We need to stop that right now. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have some more thoughts on this, and we will continue the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. One final segment dead ahead. Don't go anywhere. Back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right. I need chicken soup. I need chicken soup and more at this point. I don't know exactly what, but something. I need a little less stress in my life, I think, is what I need right now. Oh, that's not going to happen for a bit here. I'm scrolling backwards here to see One problem with closing schools, the administration remains the same size and the teachers are just reallocated. So very little expense is saved because about 80% of the district's cost is salaries and benefits. Yes, I mean, that is true, except you would lose, you do lose some administrative overhead if you close a school, right? A principal, front desk, maybe they don't fire those people. Maybe they don't let those people go. Maybe they reshuffle them into another school and they get more people. But ideally, what would happen is as you close schools, some of the duplicative overhead, like principals, administrators, secretaries, those kind of things, they would be let go. Or there would be a reshuffling based on, seniority or whatever. That's what would happen in a regular business. If you close a location, you keep as many employees as you financially can, but you don't keep them all. Now, the teachers obviously that's the production line in a school. You got to keep the teachers. And you make the schools fuller. You make the enrollment at these schools go from 50 or 60% to 80 or 90%, 90, 95%. And you keep the teachers there so you can keep the teacher-student ratio low. But all the other duplicative overhead, you don't need that. And it's sad. People will lose their jobs. I understand that. But that's what happens in the private sector as well. When you have to consolidate and downsize, it's downsizing. People get upset. Well, people will lose their job. Well, of course, people will lose their jobs. That's what happens. It's happened to all of us at one point or another, probably. We've had to take a pay cut or we've had to lose our job because it wasn't necessarily any fault of our own. It was the economy. It was the business. It was whatever. That's what has to happen. I'm sorry. Probably the biggest blow to schools are the parents who will be involved and act as an arresting force to the loons that have all seen the end game and took up homeschooling. Well, I mean, this is what's happening right now. I mean, COVID, again, really opened a lot of people's eyes. You're seeing homeschooling. I think a lot of the enrollment problems that they're having are not just people moving out of state, although there's a big chunk of that as well, is that there's a lot of people who are just pulling their kids out of school and homeschooling them themselves, doing it through some other, in some other function, with some other system or whatever else. I think a lot of that, yeah, wrong time for less stress. That's pretty much it right there. Let's see. Have you tried Airborne? I've been pumping lots of stuff. I've been pumping emergency and regular vitamin C and honey and echinacea, Sudafed. Greg yesterday recommended Alka-Seltzer Cold Plus, which I did not pick up yesterday, but I will be picking up today. So we'll see how I feel tomorrow. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, Whitney. Please, Lord, please let me feel better tomorrow. Because tomorrow or on Saturday, we'll be down at the Shriners football game in Anchorage. So I guess I'll talk about that in the next segment. I don't know, Jack, are you in the chat room? I haven't seen Jack this morning. We'll see what's oregano oil. Shot of whiskey? No, I should have had a hot toddy last night. That would have fixed a lot of it. That would have been great. I might have to make sure I got all the fixings for a hot toddy tonight. That might fix part of the problem. I'm scrolling backwards here. Whatever else has gone here. Plow. You have a plow? Brian, we have to talk. We need to talk. I might need a quick plow out at some point. All right. I'm going backwards here. See if there's anything else. Sell the school buildings. Maintenance is not cheap. I mean, that's the thing. They shouldn't that's the thing. The biggest cost of those schools is the ongoing maintenance. It doesn't do any good to close the school and then just sit on it. I mean, you do save some overhead, but not much. You should sell the schools. Will you join a bipartisan caucus? That was a question that Kyle asked, which I'm assuming is a yes answer because the current majority is a bipartisan majority. with the rural caucus in there, but we'll see. All right. We're 15 seconds out. Let's get to it. Michael, Frank. All right, here we go. The Common Sense, Liberty Based, Free Thinking Radio. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. Welcome back. One final segment here of the program for this morning. We're getting ready to roll out here, rock and roll. I wanted to tell you, well, I guess I'll finish up my thoughts on the state politics before I get into the more feel-good segment of the program for today. But now I'm going to sneeze, and I apologize. As you can probably tell, I'm not 100%. So if I go silent for a minute, it's because I'm either coughing or sneezing, one of the two. But this is the whole issue with politics, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring Leslie back on to talk about this, is because her answers for some of those questions are still not. I mean, the people in the chat room, they're saying, please answer the question on the PFD. Leslie herself said that's an important question for her constituency, and I want to see her have an answer. Now, maybe she won't have an answer until she's down there talking with other legislators and seeing what the consensus is. And maybe that's what she was trying to say. I hope so. I hope that's what she was trying to say. I'm trying to read into this at this point. But I still think, again, she is a better choice than Kawasaki, who ran on the full PFD. And then when presented the opportunity to promote that and to give that, has still on several occasions not taken it. Who's tried to malign Leslie over the whole thing. I mean, that thing where he's talking about the Hajdukovich tax and how it does all. First of all, that whole thing is just such a ridiculous misnomer. If you're vilifying Leslie Hajdukovich for supporting SB 21 and fighting against a ballot measure, then you're maligning every person who voted with her, because it was a ballot measure. The people of Alaska spoke. The people of Alaska spoke, and if you're maligning her, you're maligning every other person out there. But the fact that he got up there and said, that it costs jobs, this is what he said.
The Hajdukovich tax killed jobs, closed schools, and raised property taxes all across the state, and costs every Alaskan over $2,000 per year in lost PFDs.
So it killed jobs, closed schools, raised property taxes, and cost $2,000 of every Well, Scott, what does it matter if it costs $2,000? Because you're not voting for a full statutory PFD anyway. I mean, those are all, none of that's true. But even if it was, taking it at face value is the example of that. So it's frustrating to see that this continues to go on. I am disappointed. I'm disappointed in Alaskans for letting the PFD issue go. I'll be honest with you. When Bill Walker first cut the PFD, that's what got him unelected, right? I mean, we all know that. I still remember I was covering was it the Iditarod? No, it was the Iron Dog. I was broadcasting the start of the Iron Dog in downtown Anchorage, and this was right after the governor had vetoed the PFD. And I remember I'm sitting outside there, broadcasting the whole thing, and the announcer got up, and they introduced Mayor, I think it was Mayor Berkowitz at the time, maybe it was Mayor Sullivan, whoever the mayor was, and then, they got claps and a round of applause and everything else. And then they said, and here's here's Governor Bill Walker. The entire crowd booed. Okay. I mean, it was a loud boo. And so I could tell you right now, that's why he did not get reelected. But what really shocked me, because up until that point, the PFD had been the third rail of Alaskan politics. What got me was that the people did not hold the legislature responsible, because the Senate could have called, they could have called for an override of that veto. Now, remember, those first 3 years where they cut the dividend, that money wasn't used for state government. They just cut the money and left it in the earnings reserve. It wasn't necessary. It wasn't urgently needed to fund something in the budget that year. It just sat there. For 3 years, it sat there. Every one of those 3 years, every time they cut it, it just sat there. And what I'm disappointed about is that Alaskans weren't more vocal and vociferous about holding those legislators accountable who didn't go back. And see, I think that signaled to those legislators that maybe the people didn't care about the PFD as much as they thought. And that's what's given them the gumption, the audacity to continue to do what they're doing today, which is pick and choose winners and losers and decide how much of your PFD you're going to get. Kyle in the chat room says, Michael, you keep saying that there's no connection between voters and the budget. The current PFD debate is exactly that. I guess I don't understand how you can believe a tax will establish a nexus, then describe the PFD cut as a tax, but the PFD cut isn't a nexus. This has always been my most difficult component of this whole discussion, like, for example, with Brad Keithley, is that while I think we should have the discussion about potential taxes, whatever kind of tax it's going to be, there's going to be taxes. I think it's inevitable. But we've got to have at least the discussions about it. But the problem is that how do we get people motivated to vote in these things? And Kyle is right in a way that the PFD cut is a tax, but people aren't motivated. And that's what I was just saying, that people were kind of apathetic about it. I think that once the PFD is completely gone and they see that the appetite for spending is going to continue to increase, and that then there'll be a tax, maybe people will start paying attention. I mean, Kyle, I don't know how else to get other people's attention. Part of this was what was Hammond's belief. Hammond's belief that he didn't want to eliminate the income tax at all. He said, turn it to zero, but don't eliminate it. He said, turn it to zero, but don't eliminate it from the books because you may need it again in the future. And it's the one thing that's keeping Alaskans engaged on that. The second part was the PFD itself. I'm looking for anything to try and get the electorate involved in the cost and scope. Part of our problem is, as I said before, is that the money, we never see the money directly in our hands. Every other state in the union derives their revenue from the people directly through income tax, sales tax, user fees, use taxes. I don't know, probably state property taxes. Probably some states have state property taxes, through some form of direct tax on the people. But here in the state of Alaska, we don't see the money. It flows straight into the coffers of the government. And then they could spend it pretty much any way the legislature pleases. And so we have this disconnect. So how do we reconnect that? How do we create connection points between the people and the government spend, between the private economy and the public economy? I'm grasping at straws. I'm hoping that if we have some kind of factor where people all of a sudden realize what their government is costing them. If you told the average person who's not listening to this program, who's the average, family of four, that the government was spending $60,000 a year on their behalf on state government, they'd look at you like you were cracked out, right? Most people don't understand that. They don't understand that you're paying $14,000 or $15,000 for every man, woman, and child in the state on state government. They're like, what? And if they understood that, like I said, it's because everything is flying under the radar. It's going straight to the state. Yes. And Kyle, I agree. Kyle says when I talked about Hammond wanting them not to repeal it, he could have vetoed it. He should have. really, because his argument was turn it to zero, but don't take it off the books because we may need it. But then he is ceded to the will of the legislature. I wish he had vetoed it. He literally signed the income tax repeal. He did. He had a good warning. He should have stuck with it, and then they could have overridden him on it. But it didn't happen. So here we sit with all the money flowing directly to the government, them spending it however they want, monies that belong to the people that should go to the people also going to the government, them taking our half of our share of our oil wealth and continuing to do so for the foreseeable future. And when that's gone, there will be a new tax of some kind. Now, if it's a tax along the lines of what Ben Carpenter is talking about, with all the added bells and whistles, including maybe an increase in a gas tax or some of these other things. I mean, there was all kinds of little minor taxes inside of that fiscal policy working group plan. Maybe it still makes sense. I don't know, but we should be discussing it. But it also has a constitutional spending limit. It also has cuts. It also has an increase in taxation on the oil industry. It also has, constitutionalizing the PFD in some way or form, either by either the statutory formula or by just a payout. I mean, it has all those pieces. We should be talking about that. But it's like crickets, man. And then Ben Carpenter talks about it, and he talks about the pieces and parts, and then they try and kill him over it. What's your answer? Oh, your answer is just to spend until the PFD is completely gone and then look us in the eye and say, well, by the way, we need taxes too? I thought you were criticizing him because he said taxes are, but now it's okay because now you've exhausted the PFD? I mean, you want more Alaskans to leave? That's part of what's going to happen. You'll drive more and more people out. And what you'll do is you'll drive people out at the edges. You'll drive the edge cases out, people who could afford to live here when they received a part of a PFD, but can't when they get to that point. And if you add taxes on top of it, they definitely can. And then you get that doom loop that I was talking about, where there's fewer people for the tax base, which causes them to share a broader burden, which causes more people to leave, which spreads the tax base onto a smaller group of people, and et cetera, et cetera. This is all part of the problem. All right. Well, I didn't get to my happy stuff, which is going to be the Shriners football game this Saturday. I'll talk about it a little bit tomorrow. Shriners football this Saturday at the Dome. Big game, helping to support Shriners kids. I hope you get out there and come out and see me. But don't shake my hand, whatever you do. All right, we got to go. Hour 2 is in the can, and we are up for tomorrow is Firearms Friday. Be kind, love one another, live well, my friends. We will see you mañana. Have a good day. Yes, tomorrow is Today is Thursday, right? Yeah. Tomorrow's Firearms Friday. Jeannie's got me doubting myself. Firearms Friday? Yes, it's Thursday, right? I mean, being off on Monday and then having all this other stuff going on really blew my whole mind apart here. And then being sick on top of it. But it's, All right. Well, that's it, my friends. We appreciate it. We will see you tomorrow. Have a good day. As I said, be kind, love one another, live well.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.